the series that I've been calling How to Act Your Wage. And of course, this is part 3. Throughout this series, I've tried to help Christians, families, individuals deal with their financial matters, teach them how to manage their money better. And I've tried to draw not only on my own personal experiences, but more also on the wise advice from King Solomon in the Book of Proverbs. Recently, my wife Susan saw a sign on a church building that read, God gives every bird his food, but he doesn't throw it in the nest. And that clever little saying certainly does make sense, that God does give us opportunities. He gives us maybe the knowledge and the abilities that we can earn a living for ourselves. He just doesn't pour it into our checking account ahead of time. But once we've earned a living, once we've earned some money to live on, what then? What do we do next? What do we do with our money? And that's the question we want to address today. How do we manage our money well? And as I've said before, we're learning from Solomon in the Book of Proverbs. And the last 2 Sundays, I talked about 5 steps toward financial freedom. And those were, number 1, take responsibility for your finances. Number 2, go to God. And what I meant by that is humble yourself and pray. And then seek God's wisdom and guidance through the Scriptures, through the Bible. Number 3, live within a budget. Number 4, avoid debt. And number 5, don't expect money to make you satisfied. Now today, I want to finish with the last 2 steps toward financial freedom. As I said last week, do not necessarily expect to take these steps in the order in which I have presented them. It's more important that you adopt these ideas rather than to follow them in a step-by-step procedure. And I have not presented them in any particular order of priority necessarily, but there are some that are more important than others. I want you to think about how you can manage your finances more effectively, not just for your own personal satisfaction and benefit, but also how it pleases God and how you can use those finances to bless others as well. All right, let's take step number 6 toward financial freedom, and that is save, invest for the future. Save, invest for the future. I was talking with a young man recently, or rather, I was talking with a fellow recently who told me about a friend of his, a young man who is trusting God to provide all of his needs. And when we often say that, we think, well, okay, I'm going to sit here until God gives me the money that I should have. But as I said earlier, a lot of times God expects us to go out and work to earn the money in order that we can use it for His purposes. But once you get the money, it's also good to plan ahead. Now, wise King Solomon wrote over in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11, "He who gathers money little by little makes it grow." And then later, Solomon wrote in Proverbs 21, verse 20, "In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil." Now, stores meaning storages or quantities. He goes on to say, "But a foolish man devours all he has." Think about that for a moment. Isn't Solomon talking about saving here? Isn't that the idea that he's trying to convey? Did you know that the vast majority of American families are less than 2 months away from financial disaster if their sources of income were removed? If they were not to receive any money at a particular point and they had to survive, they only have less than 2 months worth of the ability to continue on. Now that can happen to people. If a person loses their job or if some illness causes them to be sick for a long period of time and they can't work, that puts them in a very difficult position. And it can set them back a long, long time. And the situation, though, would be much brighter if they had a resource to fall back on, like some extra money that they had saved up. Obviously, people do need to plan and prepare for the future. They need to be ready for difficult times by having a savings account where they can have money when they really need it. Financial advisors recommend that the average person get in the habit of putting 10% of their income in an interest-bearing savings account of some kind, in some kind of a interest accumulating account. Now, for example, if a person makes $25,000 a year, 10% of that would amount to $48.08 per week. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, almost $50, but it doesn't sound like a lot of money compared to what we spend these days, does it? That's not going to last very long. But if you were to save that money week after week, year after year, in 29 years, provided you saved the money in an account that earned about 5% interest, and these days that's hard to find, but a few years ago it wasn't too difficult to find 5% interest, but at 5% interest, you would have $125,000 in principal and interest accumulated in that period of time, in 29 years. Now that's a sizable amount of money, and that's because you laid it back a little bit at a time, like Solomon suggested. Now I suggest that you save your money in 3 tiers, and I suggest this to young couples who are coming to me for preparation for weddings and marriages. 3 tiers. You cannot implement all 3 tiers at once, but you start with the lowest tier and you begin to build from there. So what you do is, the first tier is an emergency savings account. And the amount of money that you want to put in that account, the amount of money you want to save up in that account, should be at least 2.5 months worth of your family income. So if you made $1,000 a month, for example, you would want to have $2,500 goal in that emergency savings account. Now once you reach that amount, you keep it at that point. You don't touch it for anything else. You don't dip into it when you want to spend your money on something else. That money is there for emergency purposes and emergency purposes only. And you might choose to put that money in an account that you have convenient to you, so that you have access to it on short notice. For example, you might put it into a bank or a credit union savings account, where it can accumulate a little interest, but it's right there when you need it. So you want to establish 2.5 months worth of family income in an emergency savings account. That is your emergency parachute. All right, the second tier is retirement savings. Now, nearly everyone here who works is going to pay Social Security. But if you think you're going to be able to live on Social Security, I've got a bridge in London that I want to sell you. Actually, it's not in London anymore. I guess it's in Arizona. But anyway, the truth of the matter is, we really can't survive very long on Social Security. It never was intended to be our full income when we retired. So you need something in addition to that. You need something in case you don't have any Social Security to rely upon. So this retirement savings account is money that you invest for the purposes of retirement. Do not invest money that you need for your living expenses. Don't touch the money that you have to spend on your regular bills, but put your 10% that you're putting into your savings account after you build up your emergency savings. Then you keep putting money in there to build up money toward a retirement account, retirement savings account. And again, you can choose several different vehicles that are available to you, such as a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, 403B, 401K, or an SEP. All of these can be used toward retirement.